Okay. Okay, it looks like we are operational. So, thank you for rolling in. If you're going to be watching this on the replay, or if you're here right now, if you're here in another realm, possibly you're watching from another dimension, welcome. Also to those of you of the three-letter agencies also currently monitoring this broadcast, welcome. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to everybody that's rolling in the room. Thanks for coming back. It's day two of a interesting and minor series of just some of the things that we've been covering over this past year with the School of Multidimensional Intuition. And so if you guys were hanging out yesterday, we talked about some chakra stuff, some energy centers in the body, stuff that's going on, things that are happening, multi-dimensional activations, I guess we could say. And so today we're gonna do a little bit more of that. We're gonna talk a little bit more about some interesting occurrences, especially the phenomenon of etheric implantation, physical implantation, entity attachment, things like frequency interference, and I guess really what I believe we need to know at this stage of the journey about these phenomenons. For those of you guys who don't know, and if you're just tuning in here for the first time, my name is Matthew. I am a clearing practitioner, a multidimensional intuitive healer, and also a professional psychic and intuitive reader. And if you've been watching any of my broadcasts before, you know we get pretty weird within the multidimensional realms in terms of understanding what's really going on in just the non-physical currents of energy that we are interacting with here on the earth plane. And so let me know where you're from. For those of you guys that are in the room, looks like we got 10 people so far. Hello, Kate Adamson. Hello, how's it going? Let us know where you guys are from. Let us know if you're on Facebook, YouTube. It looks like we are on Facebook, thankfully. Sometimes there's a little bit of a glitch with getting my stuff rolling on Facebook. So let us know how you're doing out there. Also, let us know if you have any questions. We did receive, or rather, I received a question yesterday from one of the viewers. We were talking about the solar plexus and the spleen chakra, and just some of the energies, some of the experiences, some of the frequencies, some of the emotions, what I believe is going on within these energy centers. And we did get a really, really good question on that. So I'm going to go ahead and address that question. I'm going to grab over here on my other screen. And I want to say thank you, Lisa Pekovsky. And so Lisa Pekovsky had a question about being hypersensitive to electromagnetic frequencies, EMFs, ELFs, or RF radio frequencies. And her question was, how can we block? What can we do to mitigate the negative effects or the negative symptoms or just the overall energetic damage that we will receive from I guess just negative frequencies, or rather parasitic or just very, very damaging wavelengths. And so right now, a lot of people are already familiar with 5G and Bluetooth, and the level to which we are already being sort of, we could say manipulated, we could say influenced. Essentially, the human energy system is constantly interacting with these frequencies at any given time now, whether it's your computer, whether it's your Wi-Fi router, whether it's your phone. That's the number one thing that we interact with. And so for those with extreme electromagnetic frequency sensitivity, I have noticed a lot of interaction like we were talking about yesterday within the spleen chakra. Why does that happen with the spleen chakra, and either buildup or what is essentially slow movement, or in some cases toxification of the lymphatic system? The reason why that happens is because heavy metal particulate matter, or rather, let me rewind. One of the reasons why extreme electromagnetic frequency sensitivity takes place oftentimes has to do with buildup of heavy metals, buildup of toxins In some cases, it'll even be buildup of dormant or trapped emotions within the body. And when it comes to extreme sensitivity, we find that energy buildup oftentimes within the spleen, the organ itself, within the spleen meridian, primarily down the left side of the body, also on the right as well. These meridians will mirror each other on the other side of the body, but for some reason it tends to roll down the left side. We find that we can use that as sort of a drainage device. But for those that are experiencing that type of sensitivity, we always recommend heavy metal detoxification. I have a little bit of a different protocol than a lot of people. I've noticed a lot of people talk about zeolite. For me, the most effective gut detoxifier has actually been bentonite clay. For those of you guys that are interested in getting a hold of that, I don't remember the brand name, but you can just Google it, bentonite clay. I believe, number one, that's a really, really good method of moving heavy metal toxicity out of the gut, out of the small and large intestine. What that'll do is begin to improve the frequency transmission up through the vagus nerve pathway and allow your body to make different use of some of the energy and the frequencies and even the adrenal flow coming from the kidneys. When the spleen is backed up on an energetic level, we tend to feel very much like a murky aquarium. And when the water or the sort of the frequencies within the interstitium, within the lymphatic system, are just backed up, nothing will really change. For a lot of us, we'll get physical rashes. We'll get swelling around the midsection. Like we were saying in yesterday's broadcast, some people get swelling here under the chin. People will begin to lose mobility in the hips. We begin to get brain fog. Some of us will just get extreme hypersensitivity like we were talking about earlier. And that can affect all sorts of things. It can be very, very difficult for us to control our emotions. Can be very, very difficult for us to exist in group spaces because we'll start to pick up and sort of bounce energy off of everyone else. And what happens when that lymphatic system is very, very murky is we begin to lose touch with what's our energy and what's their energy. And so I don't know if that even answered that question for Lisa Pekovsky. I would continue with bentonite clay. Absolutely. Miroslav, how's it going? Bentonite clay. Yeah, it's with a T, not a D. That'll be very helpful. Chlorophyll was also one of the substances that really, I could tell it began, pumping some form of oxygenation or a clearing, or almost like it began aerating or sort of, allowing something to flow into the cells. And so bentonite, chlorophyll, there's a bunch of other things. We talked about fulvic acid really, really quickly on the live stream yesterday. And so I hope that helps. Let us know if you have any other questions on that. Like I said yesterday, everyone is literally an expert on heavy metal detox now. Every single person will have, their own favorite kind of protocol. You'll ask one person and they'll be like, no, I never use that. Like, don't you know that has, this or that? Or, everyone has their own sort of method, their own sort of idea. A lot of people subscribe to, just certain products. Really at this stage, in my opinion, it's about whatever works and gets the job done. And so there are many, many ways in which we can detox heavy metal from the body. But for those with extreme electromagnetic hypersensitivity, I believe that's probably one of the most effective ways to begin ending at least the physical symptomology of that sensitivity. And so, yeah, thanks. I hope that makes sense, you guys. I started out on a big, long, weird rant about EMFs and the spleen chakra. And so, yeah, thanks for hanging out. Let us know if you guys have any questions. Like I said earlier, today we're going to look at implantation. We're going to look at etheric attachment, what I believe is important for people to know about that stuff. But yeah, let us know if y'all have any questions. Hello in Facebook land. We have just a few viewers here today. Please share this video. It's incredibly helpful to me if you do that. It just helps get the word out. I also want to mention, you guys heard me ramble about this yesterday endlessly. If you'd like to be a part of a workshop that I'm going to be doing next Sunday, I believe it is on August 29th, at Camp Disclosure, please check out the link in the description. It's incredibly inexpensive to take part in the live stream for this event. And it's probably one of the easiest ways in which you'll get to do a very, very unique energy clearing and intuitive activation workshop that we're going to be doing. We're going to be working on enhancing our ability to read the frequency of truth, how to open up the solar plexus, how to begin projecting and really, really understanding energy that's coming into the body. And we're also going to be talking a bit about what's going on in the ascension scene. Some of the disinfo, some of the real stuff, how to understand where we stand, what's going on in the body and what's important. So I hope you guys will check that out. That's campdisclosure.com. You guys can check the links in the description. There's a bunch of people there: James Gilliland, Z Earthstar Healer, Simon Essler, Alex Bloom, Stephen Cephalo, a number of really, really interesting and cool people from our community. So check it out. I will also be talking, as you guys already know, if you guys know me, you know I'm going to ramble about and update on all this stuff. But tomorrow night, 6 p.m., I believe, on the West Coast, 9 p.m. Eastern, myself and Simon Essler, one of the other presenters at Camp Disclosure, are going to be having just a little bit of a discussion, a little bit of a talk about, you know, some current events, weirdness in the world, rambling about confusing things, and yes, once again, talking about Camp Disclosure. And so I hope you guys will check that out. That will be tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Pacific. And so we shall begin. For those of you guys who don't know, we're starting to use StreamYard now as streaming software, so it's really debatable as to if this stuff is going to work. But what we're going to do today is just go over just some structural stuff, some information about implantation, attachment. We'll probably keep it pretty short. And feel free to ask questions if you guys have some ideas, if you have questions from your own experience. Some of the things you're going to hear here today, they might not make sense. They might clash with some of your ideas, some of your own understandings about the nature of energy, or about the nature of, you know, especially non-physical phenomenon. And so I just ask everybody here, take what you can and throw the rest out. Whatever doesn't work for you, throw it out the window. But you can be incredibly helpful to me if you just share this video. It helps me get the word out and lets people know what we are doing, especially for those that are interested in what I believe to be true multi-dimensional intuitive training, actual multi-dimensional healer training, in which we are learning to actively work and heal and work with not only our energy centers, but everyone else's, and also the energy centers of the earth, the multi-dimensional realms. And so you guys can tell I'm already going on a big rant here. So let us begin. I'm getting my screen share thing down a little bit better. Each time it's getting a little bit better. And so out of all the systems that I've been working with, I'd say over the past, I guess, 3 years now of doing this work full time, we have discovered certain things about certain systems in the body. I would say the majority of the people that I've met or that I've encountered within this multidimensional soul group, a lot of our focus when it comes to energetic clearing seems to lie within the chakra system. And yes, it is absolutely critical for understanding the nature of non-physical energy in the body. That is 100% real thing. And in fact, the chakras in and of themselves are probably, you know, like most of us are aware of on some level, the primary filters or the primary gateways for consciousness and movement of prana, chi, and kundalini through the body. But there are many, many other systems. In fact, depending on who you talk to, what area of the world you talk to them, you know, you're going to get an entirely different story. Now, we were talking yesterday about some of my experiences with the meridians, and especially that I have no formal training, I've got no formal education, but at a certain period of my life, these things begin to show themselves to me in very strange ways, lots of weird experiences in which I was given a view into what I believe to be the emotional, the energetic, the multidimensional, and the physical effects and the physical frequencies that exist within the meridians. And so today we're going to talk a bit about them, because in my opinion, I believe if you are here on the earth plane in this 3rd to 4th density realm right now in a physical body, if there is one system that you can begin working with that is going to absolutely transform the level to which you are able to feel energy, the level to which you are able to heal yourself, the level to which you are able to advance your consciousness and absolutely extend your physical life in this human body. If there's one system that you want to learn about, this is my opinion, this is my experience, I believe it is the meridian system. In fact, I believe that the meridian system represents the true energetic circuitry of the human body. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about it today. Take what you can, throw the rest out. We've got 12 primary meridians that will serve as pathways between our organs, between our energy centers, and the multitude of layers of etheric anatomy. We also have 8 extraordinary meridians. Some people call them strange flow. Other people call them external, I think was another word that I heard. Whatever you want to call them, I don't think it really matters. I believe that they are part of an additional network or sort of offshoots of the 12 primary meridians that will have also their own individual functions, their own individual emotions, their own individual experiences, all of those things. And so there are many of these pathways in the body. We're going to be doing a course in the coming months in which we're going to be going through a multi-week process of intuitive activation and learning how to work with the meridians, learning how to heal the human body using meridian transportation, which is kind of a modality that I've been working with along with scalar toning, but that's a whole other can of worms. For right now, today, I think if there's 2, important pathways that you're going to need to be made aware of when it comes to the meridians, because I think these pathways are represented throughout pretty much every model of energetic anatomy throughout the world. And when we come to the meridian body, the 2 most commonly referred to extraordinary meridians are the governing vessel and the conception vessel. I believe the governing vessel is also referred to as the Shushumna. In other modalities, it's also known as the Har line in others. But think of it as, a very large tube of energetic movement that goes right up the back, all the way down the front, where it joins with the conception vessel that begins right here. Some people think it begins right here, upper or lower lip. Regardless of where you attach that energy, the energy then begins to move down the front of the body and actually joins at the perineum, right down there in your bottom, right in the middle, where it begins to create this sort of cyclical loop of energy that moves up the back and down the front of the body, supplying all of the other meridians, pathways, chakras, organs, every element of the human anatomy with chi, vital energy, whatever you want to call it. So these are also called the central channels. Awareness of the meridian system, I believe, is absolutely vital for understanding the flow and movement of energy in the human body, especially when it comes to clearing or removing negative energetic manifestations, such as implants. You guys have heard of that stuff. We're going to talk about it more in a minute. Entities, parasitic attachments, or just blocked energy in the body. I'm already going to skip ahead and just tell you that most cases of implantation is actually blocked emotional energy in the body. Straight up. Some people get a little bit triggered when I say that because they'll be like, what do you mean there's been reptilians laying eggs inside my solar plexus for 15 years? And, people are very, very, they're very, very set in the understanding of that story. And for some people, yes, it is absolutely true. But most cases, we are talking about blocked emotional energy in the body. And so along with, all of the changes, along with this 4th density shift, along with the 5D energy that's coming in the body, also along with just the shifts in the earth plane and all the wild chaos that's happening in this world right now, the meridian system, in my understanding, in my experience, in the experience of my clients and the other practitioners that I work with, I believe the meridian system is undergoing an incredible upgrade in bandwidth, incredible upgrade. These systems are beginning to flow and, move in ways that for a lot of us are going to create some very, very interesting symptoms in the coming years. Or the coming weeks, or even right now, as we're going through all these activations. It's my opinion and my understanding and my experience that a lot of what we will call ascension symptoms, in many cases, are actually buildup or energy moving throughout, blocked up within, or just surrounding many of the meridian structures. And so We're going to talk about just a few of them. Don't worry, guys. I'm not going to linger on this one too long. But let us know if you have any questions, and thank you for watching on YouTube and Facebook. Most of the time, when people come in for clearings, a lot of the times, we'll say, we get people, pretty much everybody has this in our community. At a certain stage, we just get caught up in these cyclical thought patterns, very parasitic thoughts, very angry thoughts, very depressive or anxious energy, continuing to cycle through the mental body, constantly moving. We can't shut it off. We can't shut it out. It begins replaying our own thoughts and just continually cycling through the body. For some of us, it'll bring up this emotional cycle that just keeps playing over and over and over again. And for those of us that will experience that feeling, or those of us that have had that before, oftentimes we're talking about the energy within the gallbladder or the triple heater meridians. And you guys can look down there on the screen. It's just a head view of the gallbladder. Don't worry, everybody. The gallbladder is not there on the side of your head. That's just the energetic pathway through which the gallbladder energy begins right there at the corner of the eye. You can see that little red dot, hopefully down there on the screen. And it makes this crazy loop all over the sides of the head. It works its way in this weird zigzag motion all the way down through the body. And it's a very, very interesting and also misunderstood pathway. One of the things we find is that whatever you're thinking of when you're standing in the shower or you're like laying in bed, cycling through all these old memories, for a lot of us, that will be a gallbladder meridian energy. We also have the triple heater right there. That also begins in very much the same area. And the triple heater has a very interesting effect on how we receive, process, and store unresolved emotions. In traditional Chinese medicine and other modalities, the triple heater is oftentimes used as a diagnostic kind of pathway for understanding, the energetic flow throughout three primary chambers in the body, oftentimes the gut, the heart, and the head. Hence the name, the triple heater. And so a lot of our emotional energy will get trapped in that pathway. You guys can see it over there on the right-hand corner of the screen. And so why am I going on and on and on about these things? Well, you can see it right there. One of them goes right next to the eyes. One of them goes right around the ears. And, back in the old world colloquialisms, we say the eyes are the windows to the soul. And so whatever comes in there, in the eyes, whatever comes in on the ears, a lot of that energy will move, get trapped, constantly circulate within these meridian structures. And those are not the only ones. I'm just going to tell you. There's a multitude of points within the head. And so also the urinary bladder. For those of us that have issues with anxiety, with trapped fear, crystallized fear, a tendency to freeze, excuse me, as I spit on myself in intense situations, very, very much urinary bladder energy. It's also one of the places in which we can have ancestral kind of fear that's not even ours. And so just points of reference for those of you guys that have heard of this or have experienced energy in these areas. Nicole Kinsey, thank you for that question. Nicole Kinsey asked, does gallbladder removal affect the function of this meridian? It can. It depends on what the symptoms are, how you have recovered from that. I have had several clients that have had gallbladders removed. I promise you, they still have a gallbladder meridian. The energetic pathway still remains, and while a lot of the energy in that pathway will be born of the consciousness of that organ, even after the removal of the physical organ itself, there is still a conscious charge, meaning that even though the physical body may have to adjust, after the removal of the gallbladder, we will still experience or feel the sort of non-physical, or what we may even call fourth density energy of the gallbladder itself. And so for individuals that will not have the gallbladder, I believe that on a certain level it may necessitate more frequent clearing of the gallbladder meridian, or just greater knowledge of the level to which we will be holding on or constantly recycling thoughts, and also just the level to which we're able to sort of end or begin processes, generalize things. And I know that's kind of a weird detail, but we do find that with gallbladder energy. It has a very interesting effect on our consciousness and our behavior. For those of you guys that heard that old statement, you got a lot of gall, right? might give you a little bit of a point of reference for understanding this energy. And so you see it there on the screen, urinary bladder meridian, very, very important for trapped fear in the body. Thank you, Candace Coe, for that comment. The bladder coming up for lots of women, I know. Absolutely, men as well. Trust me, they are not the only ones. For those of us that will get, you know, I'll just give you a really, really good example, you guys. Okay, let's say you're walking down the street. For those of you guys that are not wearing masks, okay, yes, I'm going to make it current and a little bit divisive. Let's say you're walking down the street and you're not wearing a mask, wherever town you live in, if you're in America, and you see this look of fear. You'll walk up upon a person and they get this crazy look of like, this fear of like, oh my God, something is going to happen. We're in danger. This frozen like, you know, and yeah, some people will react like that. Not everyone. I'm making kind of a silly, you know, overly dramatic demonstration here, but that's a really good example of a low level urinary bladder meridian energy. It's like this moment of fear in which we will just freeze. And so we've been picking that up lately through especially social media, television, news. There is actually a artificially intelligent, or excuse me, an artificial narrow intelligence frequency that is interacting with those trapped frequencies or emotions in your body and actually exacerbating the symptomology. It's a very, very it's a very, very windy road when we get into the AI stuff, but yeah, thank you very much for that question. I hope it makes sense. Rachel Norell Rich says, women who have had hysterectomy still have an energetic womb space. You are absolutely correct. Even if you remove the physical organ, the consciousness of the organ remains, the emotional energy of the organ remains. We have even seen certain cases in which people have had organ removals, and in the place of that organ, practitioners have found an actual energetic layout or a printout, or what some people will even call a template of energy flow in the body that will be serving the same energetic purpose as the physical organ. No, it doesn't mean that, you know, they're going to grow a whole new gallbladder, but it's like we have the fourth density energetic version of that in the body. And so, yes, absolutely, we got that womb space. Thank you, Charlene Warren's pitch. Just sneezing in general in public seems to trigger people. I agree. I actually sneezed in the grocery store here not too long ago, and you could actually see people go, it's like this fear, like this shock will come over them. It's very interesting, very interesting. But don't worry, we're not here to you know, discuss that element yet. We will in a minute though. But let's get back to the content. Now, we did talk about liver, or excuse me, spleen meridians yesterday. The spleen chakra, the level to which that affects our emotional well-being. It's just important to mention. Also on the right side, we also have the liver. And I believe spleen and liver specifically, as we enter this, or as we continue to go through this fourth density shift, I believe the spleen and the liver begin to play an expanded role in sort of mitigating and processing and handling a lot of the emotional input that we are receiving in this third density physical body from not only our ancestral lines, environmental energies, emotional energy that we're picking up from other people. For those of us that identify as empaths, I believe the liver and the spleen take on an even more expanded role and begin to act as filters, filtering and drawing in other people's energy, and also pushing it back out. And that's why for some of us that are empaths or healers and we're not aware of, you know, just our own energetic management. Some of us will become physically sick. We become overly exhausted. For some of us, just going out in public right now begins to wear down the body. And so if you're one of the people that's experiencing that phenomenon, I don't believe it's really about the chakras. I believe that that is an effect of energetic buildup, excuse me, within the meridians, within what's known as the interstitium or the fascia, and also the lymphatic system. And so, yeah, I hope that makes sense. Let me know if you guys have any questions. We're going to switch over to another slide here, because this is kind of the reason why I wanted to do this presentation here today. And if you're watching us on Facebook, please take a moment, if you're enjoying this content, and please share this video. Help me get the word out about the work that we're doing at the School of Multidimensional Intuition. And by us, I mean me. So yeah, please help me get the word out. I believe that we have a very viable and truly efficient and really honestly magical method toward opening up and activating the multidimensional intuitive frequencies in the body. And I'm just really excited about, offering more of this stuff in the months to come. And so, but part of the reason why, like I said, I really wanted to do this weird live stream here today is because I want to talk about the phenomenon of implantation and entity attachment. It's something that I think in this community, everyone has heard of by now. If you're watching me on YouTube right now, trust me, you've probably heard of it. That's probably why you're here. If you're watching on Facebook, you'll already know. You're like, yeah, here we go again. But I would say this is the bulk of the client base that I receive. People that are experiencing or believe they may be experiencing some form of what I actually term, just kind of like the overall kind of catch-all term that I'm using for these things, is negative energetic manifestations. And so I call them negative energetic manifestations because I believe that term encompasses the whole of everything when it comes to, the parasitic construct. Whether it be, implantation, entity attachment, parasitism, psychic attacks, sexual vampirism, Wetiko mind virus, possession, astral abduction. The list goes on and on and on. But I call them negative energetic manifestations. And so today we're going to talk about, like I just said, the bulk of the calls or the messages I get are about some form of implant in the body. Whether it be a physical implant, whether it be non-physical implant, you name it. It's kind of a fact of life, I would say, for each of us at this point. And so how does it work? Where do these things go? How do they interface with the body? What kind of effects will they cause? And so we're just going to talk very briefly about that here today. Feel free to ask questions. And once again, some of this stuff might not make sense. You might be like, what are you talking about, Matthew? I got this huge physical implant in my brain. And the thing is, you might, it's totally possible. But yeah, often attached to key meridians, organs, chakras, you name it, etheric implants will present differently for each and every person based on a number of factors. In fact, there are very, very many. We're going to talk about a few of them here today. But while there are no absolutes, I got to tell you this, there are truly no absolutes. To one person's reptilian implant is another person's trapped childhood trauma. It is a real thing. It all depends on how we will perceive it, how we deal with it, where it lies in the body, the level to which we're able to work with it, where it came from. In some cases, who put it there is not always our stuff. But while there are no absolutes in terms of form or function, here are a few commonly accepted and experienced types of implantation. The first one that you can see on the list there is called SPE, suppressor parasite entities. That term, I believe, was coined by Lisa Renee of Ascension Glossary and energeticsynthesis.com. I believe she's one of the foremost authorities in understanding the parasitic construct. And she refers to these as the suppressor parasite entity. Why is that? I believe it is because this miasmatic energy, whether it be a parasite, whether it be an implant, whether it be our own blocked emotion in the body, when it begins to clog up or sit or interface with the gallbladder meridian, like we just talked about on the last slide, and you can see a little bit of a depiction of it there. I don't know if my mouse pointer shows up on StreamYard. But if you look over on the right side of the screen, whoever created that, thank you. I just pulled it off of Google Images, but it's a really good example of what some people will view as a etheric implant or a blockage on the gallbladder meridian. Experientially in the internal realm, in some cases, it'll show up as these miasmatic, blotches or these dark spots in the energy field. In certain cases, they might show up as, something that might even look a bit like a squid or sort of like a Cthulhu type of, looking being, for those of you guys that are familiar with that image. Also kind of squid-like. In other cases, it could show up as something else altogether. I would say in most cases of implantation along the gallbladder meridian or wherever we will pick up this constantly running sort of parasitic loop that will play in the body. Wherever that is, in my opinion and experience, it has everything to do with trapped emotion or unresolved, mental energy, thought forms. When it begins to play back or interact with negative emotional loops in the body, I believe that's often a good sign that it is, existing or flowing or influencing the energy of the triple warmer or the triple heater meridian. When it comes to those parasitic looping thought forms, especially thought forms like this constantly running cyclical, loop of thoughts, in many cases that will refer to the gallbladder meridian. It's not always those two areas. I'm not one of those people that says every time you got this crazy running loop in your head, it's the gallbladder, because it's not. There are many others. There's also the stomach. There's also, the urinary bladder. There's a bunch of connections up in the head. There's also the small intestine, which rolls right over the shoulder there as well, which has a huge impact on the intuition or how we process intuition. And so another thing we see on the list there is very, very common. A lot of us have heard of it right now. If you've watched any of my other videos, if you have looked at the work of Bernhard Gunther, I believe just, within the soul group that I belong to, I believe he's a really, really good authority or a really good source of information for how to understand and to relate and to just unpack the energy of the Wetiko mind virus. And so, by my understanding, the Wetiko is a concept that I believe originated with the Algonquin tribe, I believe, of northeastern Canada or just northeastern United States, wherever they're from. Don't quote me on that, guys. Sorry if I just butchered that one. But I believe that that's where this term was coined many ages ago, and it has been used to describe this sort of parasitic frequency of mental parasitism, emotional parasitism, group think, hive mind toxicity. And if you're looking for, what's a really good example of the Wetiko mind virus madness, I'm going to say this, and some of you guys are going to get a little bit triggered, but it's a really, really good low level day-to-day way to understand the concept of the mind virus. Okay. All you got to do is take a look at whoever's wearing those masks in their car, or the people that are walking down the street wearing 2 or 3 masks, and all of these external coverings or whatever it is. It's a really good example of the level to which individuals have bought into this sort of thought form programming that tells you must adhere, or you must engage in, you must even shame others for not engaging in some predetermined form of control, or this sort of groupthink idealism. It's really, really frightening. I said this on another video, but if you're looking for another really, really good example of a mind virus interaction, or the level to which humans are influenced on a collective level by something like a mind virus, look at how when COVID started and everybody took toilet paper off the aisles in the stores in the US, it was gone. It had literally no relevance toward anything other than some inbuilt fear or this mind virus frequency that causes people to behave in this sort of group think process. And so we've also seen the mind virus present in politics, present in elitist circles, present in corporate America. We could even say that it's present within, just like the capitalism within the United States or the global community at large. The mind virus it's a very, very broad yet also frightening concept that I believe works its way into each and every community at any stage in which we begin to exhibit or allow ourselves to buy into extreme polarization for the purpose of self-preservation or for the purpose of extending power over another. Those are, in my opinion, all good examples of just mind virus consciousness, or the ways in which we may experience the Wetiko in our world. And so we'll talk about a couple more of these here. Let me know if y'all have any questions. Thank you, Holly Summers. Certainly appreciate you. Are there exercises or meditations that we can do to get the meridians flowing? Absolutely. We mentioned this on our live stream yesterday. I believe that if you want to begin truly working out and strengthening the human energy body, in my opinion and experience, the best thing that you can do, or the thing that worked the best for me rather, was Qigong. Qigong. And I would say try any form of Qigong that works for you. Any offshoot or forms that you can actually begin to practice with regularity. I believe that in the beginning it's really just about doing it and starting a process, but what will happen is you will begin to actually develop, it's almost like invisible muscles. It sounds cheesy, you guys, it sounds dumb when you hear people say that, but this is why the Chinese and other cultures have been doing these conscious body movements for thousands of years, because they have a very noticeable and powerful effect on human consciousness. So I hope that makes sense. Thank you. Deborah Sutherland Core, seeing a lot of info on Shilajit for detox. Yes, absolutely. That is a really good substance. I took that for a while. Ultimately, I didn't really like the taste of it, and I switched over to fulvic acid because while there are certain other elements and minerals present in Shilajit, by my understanding, the most active ingredient is actually the fulvic acid, and I think also the humic acid that might exist in that within the Shilajit. In this case, I believe fulvic acid gave me kind of what I needed from Shilajit, but other people will choose to take that. I would say go for it. If it works for you, totally do it. Shilajit's incredible. I just didn't really like the taste. It just tasted bad. And I was like, well, I could take these drops over here that kind of do the same thing. Not saying they are the same compound, because some people that know will be like, well, Matthew, there's a few key differences, between the Shilajit compound and the fulvic acid that, you will buy online or in the stores. Yes, it's totally true. But I believe the overall mechanism, and no, I'm not a scientist. I have not, physically viewed this, but I believe what is happening upon use of fulvic acid and, with things like Shilajit, is that I believe that this crosses the blood-brain barrier and allows the oxidization of the heavy metal particulate matter buildup that will exist in the upper chakras around the sides of the brain. And so take what you can. Now, I will mention just real quickly, black hole siphoning and extraction. This is also one of the, I would say, more common concepts that I've encountered. And so, what is that? Because a lot of people will come to me, they'll be like, man, I have this implant and this energy is getting taken out of my body, and, they're putting thoughts in, or, certain things are happening, influencing my behaviors, et cetera, et cetera. And in a lot of cases, it's not even so much that we are being implanted. It's not even so much that something is being placed in the body. What's actually happening is that consciousness elements or emotional frequencies within the chakra system, and also the meridians, you can imagine it kind of like an IV shunt. For those of you guys that have been in the hospital, and they'll put that little thing in your arm, and it'll have that little opening so they can inject, at will, in the hospital. Black hole siphoning and extraction works very much in a similar way, in the sense that, this is an example of when we are actually being oppressed by some sort of parasitic influence, whether it be technological or sentient. One of the things we discover is that it's actually completely unnecessary in many cases to physically or non-physically implant something in the body. In case what's done is there's almost like a little hole or a tear or an opening. Some people will call these tears in the auric field. Other people, I've even heard that, they have referred to it as chakra leakage. Maybe all those terms are one and the same. I tend to call it black hole siphoning and extraction, because what we'll find is that in times of extremely polarized emotions, arguments, and cases when people will, be on drugs or under the influence of alcohol, and they'll get thrown into an incredibly intense emotional wave. In my opinion, that is one of the possible moments in which black hole siphoning and extraction will take place, because what's happening is on a fourth density plane, whether it be another consciousness, whether it be a piece of technology, whether it be, a parasitic, just an energy parasite, it's almost like they will suck in whatever that energy is, whether it be louche, negative emotion the human body creates, whether it be sexual energy. That is a very, very desirable energy for those on the astral plane that seek to harvest energy of the human body. Very, very much. They seek that sexualized energy. They seek the energy of fear. And so black hole siphoning and extraction is one of the methods in which we are interacting with the parasitic construct, but not in so much the level that, you know, something is being implanted. Although one could say that, you know, just the act of placing some form of opening or a tear or even, you know, a connection point in someone's auric field is in itself a form of implantation. I believe it is. And so what comes with that? Things like thought insertion and mind sliding. And thought insertion is exactly what you think it is, exactly what it says right there. It is absolutely 100% possible to have thoughts inserted in your brain. I guarantee you guys, your phone is doing it. I know that sounds crazy. Some people hear that and like, what are you talking about? Matthew, you try to tell me my phone is influencing how I think? Yeah, it is. It really is. It is absolutely proven at this point. The concept of biodigital social programming and the level to which you can actually have thoughts built, created, constructed within the brain. We might talk in the future about my theories as to how that happens. But another very, very common thing is mind sliding, and we sort of demonstrated this in a workshop I did. Some of you guys were there, but you know, everyone has experienced mind sliding before, okay? Because it's this thing where you'll be having this conversation or you'll be doing some work or you're right about to, you know, do something very important, and then it's like, what was I doing? What were we talking about? Oh, anyway, I'll just go. That's mind sliding. It's like this moment where you're right about to, then everything gets flipped around, turned off. Your thought processes get diverted. It's almost like something comes along and goes boop, boop, and, you know, hits the little needle on the record and you get popped over. Deborah Sutherland Core says, you know, multiple timelines. It could even be, sorry, that was out of the context of your question, but in certain cases, you know, our consciousness will even get bumped over into another frequency. And don't worry, when we talk about multiple timelines, it's very much like we're talking about radio stations at this point, you guys. A little bit of a non sequitur here, but we are just wrapping up what I believe to be a continuation or a coming together of, this is a can of worms, 3 or so, possibly more primary timelines for kind of collective futures, in 2020 at this point. I believe actually a lot of the decisions and sort of like the momentum altering choices are actually being made right now in this week in August. So take it with a grain of salt. We might talk more about that later. And so, yes, a lot of people have heard of, you know, the love bite or narcissistic relationship triggers. This will also bring up the idea of emotional or energetic pH value. And, you know, you guys might have heard me talk about this yesterday, but it's basically the level to which the overall frequency output of the human body can sort of be altered or set up to constantly attract or constantly repulse or constantly receive or constantly create a certain type of emotion, a certain type of desire, will continuously attract the same type of people, things like that. And so, yeah, just points of reference. These are things that people are dealing with in this world. Those of you that are dealing with negative energetic manifestations, and also people that are just being exposed to the overall environment and just, you know, fourth density human consciousness. It's not to say that everyone that experiences, you know, some form of, you know, narcissistic relationship triggering has an implant. I'm not trying to make that claim, but these are some of the symptoms, the behaviors, the feelings, the emotions, and just some of the details that people who will experience at certain stages these phenomenon. These are some of the things that they will come in contact with. And so let me know if you guys have any other questions out there. I appreciate you. Entity and spirit attachments often take root in specific chakras or meridians that might have vibratory relationships with a certain type of trauma, an emotion or experience that we've had in this lifetime or beyond. These can appear experientially for those of us that are able to visually perceive in the internal realm, or for those that are able to visually connect with other people's energy. Oftentimes we will perceive these as cords or chains or threads of energy, or, you know, grids, linkages. In certain cases, they will appear as, you know, like we said earlier, strange black or dark spots within the human auric field. In other cases, they will be felt as emotions. They may be heard. And yes, I'll even say it, in some cases they will be smelled, they will be tasted. One of the things we're discovering about multidimensional intuitive activation on the earth plane is that each and every person will have their own set of psychic senses that will be activating at their own set intervals. Not everyone activates the third eye very early on. Some of us do, but a lot of us will activate other senses like clairsentience, claircognizance. Some of us are just going to know. We just start to know. We just start knowing stuff. And yes, that's an oversimplification of the concept of claircognizance, but it's one of the, in my opinion, most commonly and early activating psychic senses in the body. And so some people will perceive the energy visually, others will feel it. Sometimes these cords can extend outside of the body to the entity itself. And yes, in many cases, there will be some form of an entity attachment. I shouldn't say many, though, because I got to be honest with you guys. For a person that does this as my primary mission at this stage, I have to be honest. I would say the vast majority of implantation and entity attachment removals, I would go so far as to say 7 out of 10 are actually blocked emotional energy in the body. I said that earlier, but it is very, very commonly energy of the past, energy of others, energy of ourselves that will actually be creating and presenting as some form of implant in the body. And that's not to say that they, and this is where we get weird, it can even become an actual physical implant. Some of us will actually have the ability to physically manifest the creation of these devices in the body, which is a very, very kind of murky and confusing and strange road for those of us on the earth plane, because that brings up this crazy idea, you know, like when people hear that, they're like, what are you saying, Matthew? You mean I'm doing this to myself? And sometimes we are, which is always a very, very delicate thing to try to, you know, it's a very, very delicate message to give. And so in cases when we do have actual entity attachment, though, I will say it is very, very common that there will be some form of threading or a connection or a line or just some strand of energy that will go outside of the human body. And we tend to find there are specific areas. It's not always these areas, but there are areas on the human body that will serve as very, very common attachment or connection points. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about more of those in just a few moments here. I will say at this stage, for those of us that are experiencing sleep paralysis or that have ongoing sleep paralysis issues, one of the places in which this miasmatic or this dense energy holds up is right in the back of the head, right in the back of the head, right at the cerebellum chakra, at the very base of the skull. We also have what's known as a bindu chakra right back there. Some people call it the moon portal, but these are places in which the human consciousness enters and leaves the human body when we're in the dream state. So for some people that experience sleep paralysis, it can be due to energetic buildup, in some cases entity attachment, or, you know, another way you could, you know, understand this phenomenon is, you know, very much like fleas, which is kind of a weird metaphor for some people. You know, etheric termites, you know, something that will cause an infestation. It's not always one singular implant that will exist within the body, within a chakra, within an organ. In certain cases, it's a buildup of energy over time. I used to get this feeling a long time ago. I don't get it anymore. I would go into certain areas or people's homes or places where I was doing work, and it was very much like I was getting bit by fleas. But I would look and there would be absolutely no marks, there would be no sores, but it was like some form of energetic infestation. And just because I perceived it that way doesn't mean that it was, you know, some form of, you know, actual etheric fleas. But one of the things that many people will encounter is this sort of buildup, like an infestation. Some people will even call it a pestilence, if you want to get technical and weird. But yeah, in some cases it'll appear as clouds, insects, Some people, yes, they have even experienced what are perceived as maggots or worms that will exist within the body. Myself and other clients have had the experience of feeling almost like worms moving under the skin in our face, along the actual meridian pathways in the body. Some of us will even feel like a worm moving in there. And so those are just some of the ways in which the human body will tell us that there's energy there. Doesn't necessarily mean that there's a worm or like a worm-like entity. Although those also exist, not to get weird, but you guys can start, looking up plasma beings or plasma energy. That's a whole other can of worms, though. And so entity attachments influence human behavior in an attempt to extract loosh. For those of you guys that don't know what loosh is, negative human energetic, or emotional energy. Negative human emotional energy, loosh. It's like sustenance for fourth density beings. And so what do we mean when we say fourth density beings, though, you guys? Because we should definitely clarify this. When we talk about fourth density energetics or beings that will exist on a non-physical plane, in many cases, we are not actually talking about physical beings or an actual physical reptilian that will be physically oppressing you from a non-physical realm. But what we are talking about is actual consciousnesses, frequencies, or wavelengths that will interact with the human body. In many cases, you can think of these like broadcasts or recordings or downloads, or it's very much like a download that the human body will receive. It's in some cases there is also quite literally a fourth density being actively interfering with your energy. But I believe in most cases it's not necessarily a sentient being attaching or even working as a non-physical astral handler. Most of the cases in which I have encountered individuals that have come to me with that type of energy, it has absolutely been some form, once again, of blocked up energy in the body that can cause what I call a bait signal. It's sort of like a scent or a frequency that the energy body will give off. And what happens is that will begin to actually draw in sentient beings. In certain cases, like a parasite, it has no sentience, but it's very much, like a tick that will exist or hold on to, like a meridian point. In this case, you guys can see the image there, the gallbladder meridian. And so these are just things to be made aware of. Some of you guys have experienced this. Some of you guys are like, what? This stuff isn't even real. What are you talking about? And take it all with a grain of salt, everybody. Take it all with a grain of salt. And so what happens, though, when we're experiencing implantation, influencing any form of, attachment from parasitic fourth density beings, individuals with entity attachments can be influenced to engage in addictions, victimizer type sexual behaviors. I believe that is one of the most common behavioral patterns that we will see with individuals that have long-term implantation or some form of sentient entity attachment. We see this so often with, just elitist circles, people in the upper echelons of celebrity or Hollywood, or yes, even within huge political parties. People will have these incredibly huge amounts of energy attached to them that will be influencing their addictions, sexual behavior. In certain cases, upon getting drunk or high or doing drugs, we even see people snap into completely different beings or different persons. No, that's not always just a manifestation of the disease known as alcoholism or addiction. It can also be the emergence of another form of consciousness that will be interfacing with or existing in the human body. And so, in most cases, there will be some form of latent trauma frequency or a past experience of abuse. That in some cases, it'll even be a genetic element. It'll be like an addiction or alcoholism that runs through the family of origin that will serve as an entry point for negative interaction. These are things that can be passed down through the family line. These are things that can be given to us, that can even be sort of inoculated or attached into us when we have extreme soul fracturing, extreme forms of abuse. For people that suffer extreme sexual abuse especially in early childhood, it is possible to completely attach or to insert or to really influence that person's consciousness through the tears or the holes that will exist in the auric field after that type of an assault. And so in most cases, where will those parasitic energies, those implants, or those sentient beings be attaching or holding or extracting their energy? It is through wherever that negative emotion lies within the body. And so in some cases, this will include disincarnated family members. This can include, disembodied humans that will be existing as, essentially ghosts on the earth plane, which is, kind of a weighty term. We're like, what? You're telling me ghosts will do this too? Yes, we are interacting with such a wide variety of non-physical forces and consciousnesses and literal etheric machinery that we are just now beginning to come in contact with. We are just now beginning to scratch the surface on what these things mean, how they interact with the human body, and just really the effects that they're having on us. And so the overall mission, like the overall goal behind the phenomenon of implantation and entity attachment, and yes, this is a huge generalization when I explain this, but I believe the overall goal is to further enslave humanity, to further separate this, physical being and this multidimensional consciousness existing in the physical body down here on the earth plane. The overall mission is to continue to separate us from the strands of divinity, from the higher self complex, from what we know as the Christ consciousness. And the overall mission is to, remove that element from us here on the earth plane, and in place, bring in some form of, parasitism, hive mind frequency. In some cases, yes, it's that whole new world order thing that everyone talks about, which is, it's such a buzzword now. It is such a buzzword now. But anyway, let's move on, because there's more, and I'm rambling like crazy, guys, because, along with these crazy etheric implants and these reptilian beings laying eggs inside your chakras and all that wild stuff, that in many cases it can be true. It is absolutely possible. In most cases, though, like I've said multiple times, it's a trapped energetic frequency or emotional frequency in the body that our consciousness is learning to perceive as a, an actual implanted device. And, in many cases it won't be ours. But every now and then, yes, we hear people talk about physical implantation. In fact, I think most of the implantation, requests or clearing requests that I get in my own practice, and this is pretty much every day at this stage, people will come to me saying, I have, these number of implants. I've got these physical implants in my body, and they're influencing my thoughts. They're influencing my desires. In certain cases, they'll be influencing what we say and where we go. And while that is absolutely 100% real and possible, as a person that does this work literally every day alongside other people that I respect and that I know have a very solid view into the human energy systems, it is my belief that the majority of what we will call physical implants, number one, I would say they're even more rare than etheric implantation. And number two, I would say that most of what we understand as physical implantation is born from what we might call reverse engineered ET or extraterrestrial technology. That's always a fun can of worms. And, one of the ways we could describe it is kind of like the difference that might come to mind when you think of the difference between, your landline and your cell phone, or, your mobile device. Because the reality is we don't actually need to be physically connected to really anything anymore. I was up on the top of Mount Shasta less than a week ago, or no, just about a week ago, and I had full service on my mobile device, just like everybody else. And so while that, is a little bit of a disproportionate metaphorical comparison, one of the ways in which we could think of the phenomenon of physical implantation is very much like the difference between, cell phones and landline phones. The reality is nobody needs the landline phone at any, nowadays, as long as we have a signal that we can work with. And on a metaphorical level, it's very similar to the concept of physical implantation. And so over the past 4 decades or so, Seems as though human technological capability has advanced across the board to the extent that actual physical implantation, this is my opinion and my experience, is no longer necessary to impact or affect human consciousness. In my opinion, it's really, truly not necessary. You can implant and affect another person's consciousness just with your own emotions and your thoughts right in this moment, if you want to get technical. And yes, the elitists, the control systems, the powers that be, they're all aware of this. And while we do see a lot of physical implantation still being used, you know, it's no longer necessary. And yet we are also seeing on the consumer side a huge upsurge in voluntary physical implantation with respect to, you know, quantum internet tech, AI technology, Neuralink, for those of you guys that are familiar with the Elon Musk brain implant that everyone was talking about a while back, RFID monitoring, very, very common. For the most part, the majority of these implants we will find in our ears, our heads, or any area of the body, in my opinion. These are mostly made up of handed-down extraterrestrial technology and are administered by military or governmental organizations. Unacknowledged, you know, special access projects, my labs, yes, secret space programs, individuals that have been in that. It's absolutely real. Certain individuals will experience physical implantation for the purpose of monitoring, for controlling, and also at certain stages for the purpose of cutting off or limiting energy flow through the body. And, you know, once again, and not necessary to be implanted on a physical level. I would say that for the majority of people that present with physical implantation, I believe that physical implantation is more in use by Earth-based groups, people on Earth, groups on Earth that are using physical technology. In my opinion, as soon as we get outside of the physical Earth plane, that physical technology can be rendered absolutely pointless and utterly irrelevant due to just the absolute control and the connectivity that we'll have in the fourth density realm. And so that's why I believe majority of implants are actually non-physical, etheric technology that serves the exact same function and purpose, but is entirely just outside of the spectrum of visible light. And so therefore, we won't really see it, but we'll feel it. And, you know, once again, that's not to say that there are no physical implants. I will tell you straight up, this is real. I believe I have a physical, well, I mean, it's been there for so much of my life, you know, right in the ear. Many people will have this. It is very common for those of us that have been, you know, what we understand as extraterrestrial experiencers or have had some form of, you know, astral abduction. Does it mean that there's an implant here? Not necessarily. I think in many cases, the physicality of implantation can be very, very easily deactivated. I believe in many cases, you can even deactivate layers of older physical technology that will be implanted in the human body. It's very easy to, I believe, not necessarily permanently deactivate, but kind of suppress the frequency or create a dead spot around that through using something as simple as a meridian pen or an acupuncture pen that will be transmitting electricity into the human body. You guys have seen those pens or those ads on Facebook or whatever where, you know, it's like a meridian pen that shocks your skin. I have had direct success with limiting the symptomology and in certain cases, what I believe, deactivating the electromagnetic output of physical implantation. I've done this on myself and I've done this on other people. I don't believe it always works. I think it depends on the nature of the implant, if it is physical. In certain cases, you guys heard of, I believe it was Dr. Roger Lear some years ago. He was popular within, you know, the disclosure scene. He was one of the, I believe he was a podiatrist that was actually surgically removing physical implantation. But just to be straight up, I don't think they're necessarily something that will need to be physically removed for those of us that have physical implants. I believe that they can be deactivated. I believe they can be suppressed. I believe in many cases, those of us that have been previously physically implanted, as we continue to go through the layers and the ongoing process of fourth density activation, I believe that many of these things just become dead tech that will exist within the human body, and the method to which we will be interfacing or being connecting with non-physical energy will be entirely frequency based. It's like a wavelength or a radio station. So thank you. Let me know if you guys have any questions, anything else here. And so you can see it there on the screen. By my current understanding and experience, the majority of physical implantation is used by covert ET or military groups as part of the ongoing monitoring of certain bloodlines and members of the Earth population that will have specific DNA markers. Many people have dead or deactivated physical implants already. I would say if you're one of those people that have had, ongoing experiences or understanding that you've been a part of some sort of, government program, maybe you got MK Ultra, maybe you just remember color training from another time in your life. That's a real thing. A lot of those experiences will come with layers of etheric implantation, and in certain cases actual physical implantation that will be placed in the body just to monitor you. In certain cases, yes, it will also be altering your emotions, your urges, your behaviors. So yeah, take it all with a grain of salt. Regardless of the physicality, the physical implantation, while it is an important factor to be aware of, I believe we need to take our focus away from the third dimensional physicality and begin looking into the fourth dimensional concept of immediate and instant connection across time and space. And if you want to get really weird, you guys, that means that technically you can be being oppressed or affected or implanted by beings or another version of yourself or even other energies that don't even exist in this time period right now. For some of you guys that will hear that, you're going to be like, Matthew, what are you talking about? This doesn't make sense. And yet it does, because it is an absolute fact of our existence here on the earth plane. And we're living in the stage in which that veil is lifting each and every day. We're experiencing all sorts of changes. And so we're going to move on. Yes, there is more. And please share this video. If you guys are enjoying this content, please share the video. Let me know if you guys have any questions. And also, please do tune in tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Pacific. 9 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be doing a little bit of a chat with Simon Essler talking about camp disclosure and just what we're going to be bringing to that event. If you also enjoy this content, if you'd like to be a part of a workshop I'm going to be doing next weekend, you guys can purchase a live stream ticket at the link in the description. Just go to campdisclosure.com. It's the cheapest live stream you're ever going to get. And so, yeah, we're going to be talking about some of this stuff next week, and we're even going to be doing a clearing at Camp Disclosure, in which we're going to be moving some of this dead energy out of the body. And so, yeah, thanks for hanging out, everybody. Let's switch slides. I also want to thank StreamYard for working finally. We're finally getting the hang of it. So we are going to talk a little bit about J-seals. We're going to open a really huge, weird, bizarre can of worms because, sure, there's physical implantation. Yes, technically there are, we could say grays, alien grays that are putting implants in your body. Sure, we could even say, yeah, maybe some of those will be anal probes, if you want to go there. It's kind of a, like a facetious thing at this point. A lot of people will joke about it, but those are all facts of our existence. They're all just additional experiences and stuff that people will go through in this life. I believe probably even more common than a lot of these other things, such as physical implantation, etheric parasites, attachments, et cetera, I believe even more common than that exists within the human body, this sort of non-physical grid or these layers of what we might even call standardized kind of blockages, maybe even implants in the human body. And some of you guys have heard of the concept of J-seals. You guys can go on YouTube and Google J-seals, or just search it online, and you're going to find many articles. I will be honest, the majority of them seem to be copied or rehashed or sourced from kind of the same series of disseminated understandings and viewpoints that have been released over the years. I'm going to give you a little bit of my own version of it, my understanding of the J-seals. And so in addition to a number of other strange energetic manifestations. One area that has come into greater focus recently is the concept of J-seals, also known as death seals, which, you know, that's always a fun term, right? Yeah, it turns out you got a death seal problem. You know, people go, what? You know, that's always a fun term to throw around in a healing session, right? No, seriously though, yeah, I rarely ever refer to them as death seals, but other people will. You know, some people will call them unnatural seals. One of the more common, just, you know, colloquialisms we will use for this J seal phenomenon is, I believe it was coined by Lisa Renee, and that's the concept of crucifixion implants or crucifixion implantation. And you guys can go ahead and look up energeticsynthesis.com or Ascension Glossary if you want to look into more detailed information about how these interact with the body. But to put it simply, these refer to genetic alterations or mutations, standardized genetic alterations or mutations that have been placed within the human body. I believe in the majority of people upon the earth plane, those of us existing in the physical body, I believe the vast majority of us will have standardized blockages that will exist within our physical framework and non-physical framework. I believe they will also correspond to certain points on the Earth grid. What some people will refer to as the axiotonal lines of the Earth grid will also correspond to the axiotonal lines, or, you know, additional pathways of energy within the human body. And so along those axiotonal lines, or just those pathways of energy that correspond with pathways on the Earth plane as well, or within the Earth itself, we tend to find these, you know, these strange genetic blockages. And so where did they come from? First off, I guess the word J within J seals, commonly understood to refer to the, you know, what some people call the Jehovian Anunnaki. I believe that is a very, very loosely used term. Whether that is the origin of these blockages or not, I think is nearly irrelevant. The origin might not really matter, I guess is what I'm saying. But what we do understand is that place within key areas of the human body and the Earth grid by what people will refer to as, you know, what we will call the multidimensional races that had a hand in the creation or the alteration of the human body. These things have been placed within us. And so think of them like artificially placed roadblocks within your energy system that interact with a number of chakras, meridians, frequencies, organs, elements of your consciousness, etc., etc. They're all contained within the human body. They'll also have a huge impact on your DNA strands, dormant DNA strands, fourth and fifth density frequencies that are activating in the body. And so you guys can look at the graphic there. This is one of what I found to be one of the more clear kind of visual layouts of, you know, J seals or crucifixion implantation. You guys can see that sort of mapping there of the human body. Notice how a lot of this energy or these blockages tend to sit on the left side of the body. That's not to say they will only be affecting the left side of the body, but I believe the reason why a lot of the J seal architecture or the structures that will exist in the human body, the reason why I think they were placed on the left side, I believe has to do with the thematic suppression across time and space of the divine feminine. Now, many of us have understood at this stage of the game that there are two sides or two templates. Well, there's actually a number of templates within the human body, but we tend to understand with generality that there's a female side, which tends to be the left side of the human body, and the male side, which tends to be the right side. Now, in many cases, the sides can be flip-flopped. That's not to say that each and every person has the left side of the body being the female side and the right side being the male. In many cases, we will find these flip-flopped, but regardless of that, we tend to notice the existence of these energy blockages on the left side of the body. And where might they sit? Where might they affect? Where might these energies be placed? Number one, we find them within the spleen meridian. And the spleen meridian is an interesting pathway, extends down to the, you know, the left foot and also the right foot if you're looking at the mirrored aspect of it. But we tend to find a lot of blockages within the lymphatic channels, within the pineal glands, right near the heart chakra, and a lot of them tend to be on the left side of the body. And so we find those within the urinary bladder, and also the psoas muscle. If you can see down there, whoever the creator of this graphic was referred to it as J-Seal 3. Notice that it even says left thigh and buttocks. I believe that is actually most commonly located within the psoas muscle on the left side. I believe there's actually a valve or an element of the intestinal tract that will exist within that area as well. I don't know what it's called in the moment. We can look it up, but I believe that will also be affected by J-Seal structures in the body. And so these are just places that you can begin learning about pathways in the body that will begin to help you understand where there may be standardized energy blockages that will be affecting things like, you know, your life cycle, how long the human body is able to exist in physicality. It is believed that, you know, that zeta seal right there, if you look at that Z, which is, you know, once again, kind of a, you know, an interesting depiction. No, I do not believe that if you go, you know, diving into the non-physical layers of the human body, you will run up against a giant Z on someone's chest, indicating a zeta seal. But I believe you will find, if that energy is an issue for that client, you will find a miasmatic blockage of energy. It may be perceived in a number of different, you know, manners, but the zeta seal, you know, and once again, could be, you know, a very colorful misnomer, but the zeta seal, I believe, refers to an etheric or energetic construct that was placed within the human body by what some believe to be the zeta reticuli group of extraterrestrial beings. Some people will perceive them as small grays. In some cases, they'll perceive them as blue gray aliens. In other cases, people will have experiences with very, very tall insectoid-like beings. It is believed in generality that the zeta seal, or the concept of the zeta seal, is what we might call a frequency fence that blocks the activation of the fourth DNA strand in the body, and what some will even call heart chakra activation, or the activation of green ray energy, for those of you guys that follow the law of one. And so the zeta seal, by my understanding, will actually serve to block the awakening process. It'll serve to block the activation of the Christ consciousness in the body, and can also be used to completely bypass the heart chakra when it comes to solar plexus chakra activation and the expression of energy through the throat chakra. For those of you guys that saw the live stream yesterday, we explained just in generality how there's a very distinct linkage between the solar plexus and the throat. And so we find the zeta seal, or the concept of a zeta seal, or if you want to get even more technical, the concept of a frequency fence, as being one of the primary J-seal structures that will exist in the human body. And I believe that the zeta seal and what they call J-seal 2 on that image right there, they may be one and the same. In certain cases, it'll be over to the left. But I can't tell you how many times I will see clients and they will come to me and they're like, I have these things and these feelings or these sensations, and they're on the left side of the body, or there'll be a disconnection between the left side and the right side. In certain cases, yes, while we do tend to have J-seal architecture running down the left side of the body, it will also affect the right in much the same way. It's not necessarily tied to one actual side of the body when it comes to symptomology. It could be a number of things. And so thank you for your questions. Nicole Kinsey says, random thought, the heel prick at birth, the sign of a seal with human blood. Interesting observation. You never know. I think a certain amount of that, or if it is still practiced, I believe has to do with testing the, you know, just the blood type. But it could very well be. Oftentimes in a lot of those, you know, old world medical procedures or standardized things can on a certain level be tied to some form of a spiritual action, or what some will even call an energetic transaction, if you want to get weird. And so I will mention one other J-seal all the way up at the top of the head. Now on the graphic down there, it's called the Templar Axion seal. I'm going to be straight up with everybody watching this. I don't think that's actually what it's called. I think that that may be a frequency that people have identified for practitioners that are working with that energy. I don't necessarily believe that there is actually a Templar Axion seal that was placed in our body by seventh dimensional beings. But what I do know, almost undebatably, is that for many of us, there is a literal frequency fence that will exist right above the human body. In many cases, it will be placed between the crown chakra and the soul star chakra, which exists just outside of the human body at the top of the head. And what will happen is it's like a limiter, it's like a filter, it's like a blockage. In certain cases, it's an actual disc or an etheric device that will just get placed in kind of a pipeline, and it will block the flow of energy. And so that is one of the most common forms of frequency fencing in the body, a J-seal structure right at the crown chakra. Certain people will begin to move their kundalini through the body. They'll begin to engage in spiritual practices or self-work. And through the act of rising energy up the Sushumna, or what some people will call the governing vessel, people will experience a great eruption or a pain or just this incredible sensation at the top of the head. In some cases, the kundalini will pass right out of the body, and we may experience some form of an awakening or a mystical experience. In certain cases, we will even experience kundalini sickness or highly polarized emotional or mental states that will show up as the result of this energy. In other cases, when there is a very pronounced frequency fence device or seal placed at the top of the head, the energy will come right up to the lid or the top of the human energy field and create this incredible pressurization in the human body. Nothing can escape and very little can get in. And what we find is individuals with really advanced or very, very, just extreme frequency fence blockage in the crown chakra begin to experience bipolar mania, in certain cases dissociative disorders, in certain cases schizoaffective disorders. Alters will begin to kick on. People will go into all sorts of manic waves. And so also known as the crown of thorns, if you want to get technical. You guys will see it referred to there in the text on the screen. But these are all etheric structures or non-physical, elements of energy that could be, and for many of us, are actually affecting a lot of us on the earth plane. And so for each of us, it's a little bit different. It's not to say that every human being has all these sort of J-seals in the body. I'll be honest with you, I believe that they're kind of standardized elements of the human experience if you're existing in a physical body, but I don't believe that they are necessarily things that we will experience or have to deal with. I believe that those of us who are actively engaging in the process of ascension and transformation of the just our consciousness from third into fourth and also fifth density, yes, those can be and are often areas of concern that we're going to need to begin working with, start learning how to heal as we continue to move through this ascension. And so please let me know if you guys have any questions about that. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Thank you. Charlene Warren's pitch says she's read that piercings can open the body to possible attachments. Can you speak on this, as I have many piercings? I'll be honest with you, Charlene, I haven't heard that. It could be true, though. And at this stage, in a technical way, I suppose we could say anything, any type of foreign object that will be implanted into the physical human body on some level will have an effect on our consciousness or our body. But that's not to say that it will necessarily cause negativity. Now, I have actually heard of people that will receive piercings and energy will begin to flow differently. I can tell you one case firsthand of a woman that I know who actually, I believe she got the left side of her nose pierced. It might have been the right side. And upon getting her nose pierced, she actually had an end to this very, very difficult menstruation cycles where she would not get her period for once, but maybe every 3 months. She had really, really difficult menstruation. And as soon as she received, just, by chance, a piercing, I think it was the right side, I want to say, could be the left. Actually, in kind of thinking of it, I believe it was the left side because that's where the, I believe it's the Ida, or whatever it is, the female aspect of the nadio complex that rises up and kind of intersects under the nostrils and then subsequently up at the pineal gland. And so anyway, trying to get back to the energy of the moment, what we observed is after she pierced her her nose, she began to have regular periods. And so just a point of reference, I know that might not have anything to do with your question, Charlene. Thank you for mentioning that. But yeah, I have actually seen more positive results than negative. But I say that, Charlene, because I believe I've only at this stage, I can think of 2 cases in which I've dealt with. Yes, I can think of 2 cases, at least in the moment, in which I've dealt with people that had questions about piercings, but honestly, neither of them were negative. But I will also say there's always an exception. I think it depends on where the piercing is, what might, the reasons why, if it's, hitting in, one of the meridian pathways, it could have an effect. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. You can tell I'm getting pulled off the essence of what I was trying to say. Thank you. And so I believe we've got one more slide here, you guys. We're going to talk about one more thing before we get out of here. It's kind of the most important thing that I wanted to talk about today, because in my work, in the clearing work that I do, in the group work that we do in the classes, and also for those of you guys that are going to be watching the Camp Disclosure live stream that we're going to be doing next week, for those of you guys that are going to be joining us for that, we're also going to be working with the lymphatic system. And why would we be working with the lymphatic system, though, Matthew? Why would this have anything to do, with intuition or just 4th and 5th density energy? Well, it has a tremendous amount to do with it. And I believe that there is one system in the human body that when I began working with it and began trying to understand and began trying to create deliberate flow of energy through the lymphatic system, what I noticed was that my body changed, my emotions changed, my energy level changed, my mental functioning changed, my ability to actually feel non-physical energy in this world. All of those things changed. Now, why and to what end, and the exact processes around it, I think they're going to be a little bit different for each of us. But to put it simply, you can think of the lymphatic system a bit like your body's internalized plumbing or sewage treatment system, all in one. More specifically, the lymphatic system is a network of tissues and organs that help rid the body of toxins, fats, water, all sorts of unwanted materials. The primary function of the lymphatic system is to transport lymph, a fluid containing infection-fighting white blood cells throughout the body. When we look at the structure and makeup of this system, we begin to realize it is quite literally an aquarium-like layer of living, vibratory fluid that flushes and clears everything else in our body. This is a closed-loop system, you guys. The lymphatic system, for those of you guys that don't know, and who knows, maybe everybody knows this, it does not pump with your blood. When your heart beats, it is not pumping your lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is governed and mobilized through respiration, through the action of the diaphragm, through your body's physical movements, especially through the movement of the organs and how they flex and sort of move and contract as we breathe. These are the actions or just the areas or the elements of the body that will begin to transmit lymph. And so the primary function is to transport this fluid through the body, very, very much like an aquarium. And what we're finding is on a mass level, collectively, we as people, due to the weaponized food that we're eating, due to the vaccines that we're receiving, due to the frequency interference that we're receiving from things like, I'm just going to say it. Don't cut me off, y'all. 5G, it's a very, very controversial thing to talk about. But one of the things we're discovering is that if there's an energy system in the body on the physical level that seems to be receiving a lot of the, the brunt force of these parasitic frequencies, for a lot of us, it will start with buildup within the lymphatic system. And what happens when energy begins to build up in the lymphatic system? We begin to lose mental functioning. We begin to experience brain fog. We begin to develop autoimmune disorders. We begin to lose emotional discernment. We begin to lose connectivity between the gut brain and the physical brain up at the top of the head. We also begin to effectively shut down the third brain. Yes, there's a third brain in your body, guys. It's the energetic field around the heart. One of the things that will really, really block up that emotional and energetic discernment and the level to which you will be able to transmit your own energy or feel other people's energy also has to do with the toxicity or the clarity of the lymphatic system. And so as we gain more awareness of the energetic and electrical conductivity of our lymphatic system, and especially this kind of an organ, if you want to get technical, some people call it the biggest organ in the body. It's called the interstitium, also known as the fascia, if you want to get technical. It's this sort of contiguous fluid-filled space that exists between the cells, between the layers of our organs, all throughout the musculature in the human body. What we found is that there is an additional layer of space that will exist in an entirely fluid-filled environment. And what they discovered, years or so ago in mainstream medicine was that they weren't really observing the interstitium, because upon, chopping up, say like a body or a cadaver, or upon, observing tissue that had been removed from the human body, they didn't realize that the interstitium actually collapses. And so the interstitium, or the fascia, is most easily observed in living beings and living tissue. And what we have found is that it is an entirely separate, incredibly conductive liquid layer that extends throughout the entirety of the human body. And so for those of us that are trying to truly awaken clarity, intuitive ability, that are trying to make full use of your discernment abilities, your mental abilities, your ability to defeat illness, to completely revitalize your immune system, it is my belief and my direct experience that the lymphatic system in the human body represents one of the most direct routes toward achieving those things. And so very, very important. And so one of the things we need to be made aware of with respect to the concept of AI, or artificial intelligence implantation, the concept of frequency interference that we receive from, environmental frequencies, technological frequencies, cell phone towers, and things like that. One of the things that we will really need to be made aware of as we go forward, especially with all the vaccinations that everybody's going to be receiving in the coming years, or I pray that they're not, is the level to which it interacts with the lymphatic system. And so very soon in the coming weeks, I'm going to be debuting a new service or a new private session in which we're going to be working specifically with building up immunity in the human body through what I believe as a process known as lymphatic mobilization. And that's where we create an actual physical auditory tone and begin to move it through specific areas in the lymphatic system. And what we find is that when we do that with intention and specificity, we're able to literally mobilize lymphatic fluid in the body and create drainage, create clarity. We find that we can release buildup of toxic heavy metal around the upper chakras. What we find is that for people that have extreme lymphatic toxicity or stagnation, this will mix with energy that comes from the cerebral spinal fluid, mixes with energy of the lymphatic system. And also, it's not listed on the screen, a whole other substance that exists around the brain known as brain glymph. It's fluid that surrounds the brain. And so it's just very important to be made aware of, some of the methods or the level to which we're going to be influenced or could be possibly influenced by frequency interference is going to be through the interaction of these systems. Imagine if there was an entirely separate layer of liquid surrounding the human body that upon vibrating or just interacting or feeding some form of energy or frequency into the system, you could affect everything, the condition of everything in the body. Well, the lymphatic system is one of the areas in which we have direct connectivity with everything else. And so this can result in the manipulation of emotions, creation of pain in the human body, and even the controlling of vital bodily functions. Absolutely real. Heavy metals and other forms of particulate matter or nanotechnology that we will breathe in through, yes, things like chemtrails, the water that we've been drinking, all sorts of, mainstream medicine. The reality is right now, there are a tremendous amount of, nanotechnology that is being transmitted, or, that we're just ingesting through these things. And over time, these build up in certain areas of the body and can be used to create tremendous blockage, tremendous influence, all sorts of wild stuff. And so one of the things we're going to see in areas in which they will have, advanced 5G frequencies in place in certain, mass metropolitan areas, what we're going to be seeing in the future, for those of us who are buying into this sort of, parasitic construct, new world order, timeline that they're trying to get us to buy into, one of the things we're going to be seeing, or could be possible in the coming future, is people existing within certain metropolitan areas based on the buildup of heavy metal particulate matter and nanotechnology in the body mixed in with, things like vaccines, can be actually activated through technological or just, non-physical frequencies. And what we're going to see is that people will be activated on a mass level into new types of viruses. You can have an entire city be activated into an emotional state or a behavior cycle. You can literally send out a wavelength through people's phones, mobile devices, their routers, even through people's cars, because many people with newer cars are connected to the internet as well. And those wavelengths can be used to absolutely influence human behavior, especially if you're one of the people that's been getting all of your vaccinations like a good human. Those people are going to be prime targets for that type of interference in the coming years. And one of the ways in which we're going to be learning to mitigate and lessen that damage is through working with the lymphatic system. And so please join us at Camp Disclosure. If you check the link in the description, we're going to be doing a workshop working with this energy, and I'm excited to see how people do. Also, stay tuned, because pretty soon, probably maybe even by tomorrow, I'm going to have it on my website, offering this as an actual service that you can take advantage of. It's a private session that we do in which we'll be bringing mobilizing frequency through the body. And hopefully, in fact, I will say, I believe in nearly every session that I have done this, we have created a tremendous amount of clarity in the body. Not only mental clarity, but for some reason, it seems to affect the hips and the knees and the mobility of the human body that allows people to get more motivated. It allows them to start moving again. That's a sign. When we start moving lymphatic fluid through the body, things loosen up. We feel better. We have more energy. So I think that is probably, might be our last slide here today. I want to thank you guys for being a part of this. I believe that is it. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Let me know if there's anything you want to ask about. If there's any part of this presentation that has been unclear, something that you're trying to unpack or understand for yourself. And if you're one of the people that's experienced these phenomenon or some of the maladies of the star seed, as I call them, feel free to get a hold of me through my website, rememberyourmission.com. In which we are working with these very frequencies. And so probably in about, I would say, the next couple days or so, we're also going to have a new class added up on the website. For those of you guys that are interested in learning how to work with the meridians, how to clear energy, how to activate your own intuitive abilities. I believe that's going to be the next class we're going to be offering. And also, yes, I'm going to say it, we're going to be doing a class on 4th density survival skills. Understanding the phenomenon of psychic attack, how to create and strengthen shields, barriers, layers of energy around the human body that can help us understand when we are being assaulted by non-organic or other people's energy, when we are experiencing a frequency coming in, something that we need to be made aware of. There are a few areas of the human energy system that, upon activating and working with those areas, begin to create and allow us a different level of interactivity with parasitic energy. And so in the coming weeks, we are going to be doing a class on that and all sorts of cool stuff. So yes, thank you, Nicole Kinsey, rememberyourmission.com. That is the website. I believe it's in the link for this. If you're watching on YouTube, the link might not be there. If you're watching on Facebook, I'm pretty sure it's in the description. Check that out. Charlene says, cupping massage is awesome for fascia. Absolutely, absolutely. I actually have not experienced cupping, but I've seen it done on other people, and yes, it is legit. Tracy Shug says, What would you suggest doing to remove energetic CO2? And so let's go back to energetic CO2 so everybody can check that out. Thank you, Tracy. Let's check it out. So for many of us, we have understood, or has been referred to as, one of the J seals, or the energetic blockages that will exist near the heart chakra. In certain cases, I believe this energy will actually be implanted or existing within the pericardium meridian. It can also be, let's get really weird, it can also be in a space right in between, I believe, the lungs, or the left lung, and the physical heart itself. That's not to say that this is a physical blockage on any level. They're almost entirely energetic, but just when we talk about location, this does, in my opinion, appear to be one of the more tangible structures. The fact that you're asking about it probably means that you've been kind of feeling it, or yeah, and I see your comment there, Tracy. You've been feeling a pressure there. You've been feeling an energy. One of the things you can begin to do, number one, I would say, is begin coming, or try to gain awareness of the kidney meridian, because we have these interesting pathways of energy, Tracy, that go right down the kind of dual lines that go right down the front of our chest here, and those are for the kidneys. The reason why I believe those are important when it comes to moving energy from the J seals around the heart is that I have found there's a lot of energy, or sort of cloudy emotions or intensity, that will rise upward from the kidneys or the kidney meridians and sort of hang out around the heart space as kind of a cloud of intensity, a cloud of intense emotion. In certain cases, it can be anxious energy. In certain cases, it can just be kind of, just intense feelings. One of the things we find is that upon tapping, using EFT tapping up at the collarbone or along the kidney meridian itself, it can begin to move energy downward. For some people, that can reduce the symptomology from what they may perceive as energy buildup in the heart space, or even J seal activity. To be honest with you, Tracy, and I want you to take this with a grain of salt, for some reason for you, it feels more like pericardium meridian or lung energy than possibly a J seal blockage. And, once again, granted, we're just on a live stream right now. Take it with a grain of salt. The reason why I say that is just, based on just intuitive energy in the moment, and also based on just the fact that many, many of us are also experiencing a buildup of energy there right now that will have to do with other people's emotion. If it's an emotional current, it'll tend to be lung energy. If it's barriers or sort of blockages against intimacy or human connectivity, it tends to be a pericardium energy. In certain cases, when it's just a physical issue or even just an intense energy, in my opinion, that could be indicative of just overall J seal buildup or miasmatic energy there. I would say also look at the spleen meridian itself, and you may find that some of the energy that you're experiencing as chest-based energy from that J seal will actually be built up from energy right underneath the left arm that will pertain to the spleen as well. And so I don't know if that helps, Tracy, or makes it more confusing, but yeah, look at those elements. Look at also the thymic chakra, which will be one of the primary points, or one of the primary elements of the chakra system that seems to be drawing in other people's emotions. It seems to be very much like an empathic magnet. And so a lot of people will get this big buildup of energy right here at the top of the chest, in which we'll experience all this emotion, all this intensity. It'll be very difficult to speak. At certain times, we'll get really intense, and then and we just blurt out all this stuff, and it's like this pressurized sense. Other people get very, very, depressed or emotional. And so that might not be what you're dealing with, Tracy Shug, but it could be as well. There's a number of things that will kind of center around the chest that could have an impact. So I hope that makes sense. Hopefully I didn't just ramble on that for you. Thank you, Sarah Lee. Thanks for hanging out here. Mandy Melinda Benoit, what's going on? How's it going? And so let me know if you guys have any other questions, if you have any other issues, if anything else has been going on in your world and you're wondering about this or that. Laura Lee says, is the entity attachment clearing the best to start with? I've tried to schedule an appointment, but it wouldn't let me complete the payments. I will try again. I'm very sorry about that. It's been a periodic issue with the website, at least my website. I don't believe it's an issue right now. I've noticed people were booking just over the past couple days. So it seems to be operational. I know some people will have to disable the pop-up blocker on their computer. If you're doing that on a laptop, sometimes you got to turn off the pop-up blocker for PayPal to initiate. And in certain cases, also, if it's done over a mobile phone, we can have a little bit of a glitch out there. But I would say if you're looking for where to start in terms of energy clearing, I usually refer people to the implant and attachment clearing on my website, because that allows us a good chunk of time to work with, number one. Number two, it also tells me what you're coming in for. And number three, we use a process through which we tend to stay very, very meridian and chakra focused in terms of flushing or removing energy. And I will say it also takes a very, very multi-purpose format. So I would say go with that if that's something that you're interested in. I hope that makes sense. Thank you. Mandy Melinda Benoit says, some people practice J-seal removal. Have you had yours removed? That's a very good question, Mandy. Thank you for that. My experience with J-seals might be a little bit different than other people. I perceive the J-seals as standardized elements of energy or things that will be existing within the non-physical genetic framework of the human body. To me, the J-seals are not something that you would remove, just like you would not remove, you know, a faucet or a plumbing fitting from underneath your sink. You're still going to use part of that structure to pass energy through. It's not so much that the J-seal itself will need to be removed. In my opinion and experience, what will need to be removed from it is actually the miasmatic or the built up energy from that location or from that area of blockage, not necessarily removing the J-seal in and of itself. Now, a lot of people will, advertise, J-seal removal. And, yes, they're removing energy from the J-seals. Are they removing the J-seals themselves? I think that is debatable. I don't necessarily believe you would even need to actually remove them, or that you even could, in much the same way that people talk about chakra removal. A very, very good friend of mine, Eric Rains, has talked a bit about chakra removal. What we found out in the years since is that chakra removal, in my opinion, and I believe also his experience, is actually incredibly rare. What we find is chakra compression, or chakras joining together in the body. And so, once again, physical structures are not necessarily something that we will be removing, but they will integrate, they will coalesce, they will transform. In certain cases, chakras will even be completely deactivated or suppressed on the level that, for certain people, when they view the human body, they will not even perceive that the chakra is there. Or when they feel into the human body, they'll perceive that that chakra is gone. But I believe, just in generality, that J-seals are not something that we will actually remove entirely from the body. We will clear the energy from those locations. Upon clearing the energy from the locations, and also I think in many cases, working with whatever the frequency is or opening up that passage point, the energy starts to flow again more freely. Now, I believe there are a couple different there are a couple exceptions. Once again, this is also my experience, so please take it with a grain of salt. And yes, on the screen here, they are referred to as the crown of thorns construct at the top of the head. And also, I guess in this case, what we will call the Zeta seal, although I have to say, once again, I think those are colorful misnomers, or just very interesting kind of, theatrical terms that we will use to describe standardized blockages. But I believe that those two, in my own experience, and I believe there's probably many others, I just haven't been made aware of them, the seal that tends to sit around the heart and the seal that tends to sit around the top of the head, I believe those can be absolutely removed from the body. And I will tell you, my experience with that was such that I believe the energy was actually removed from me. It was a physical thing that I physically felt. Not to say that, there was something that physically came out of the body, but there was a very physical release in my own life upon, I believe, popping that seal around the heart space. Also up at the crown. I have had certain clients, when we're doing energy clearings, they will actually hear like a pop that will come out of certain areas of the body. It has been so common in the work that I do that I actually will create that sound as part of a symbolic gesture of, disconnection Other practitioners will sort of, swish their hands or even, just create a gesture. We tend to do little pops or little movements or little snaps in my energy work, as it creates a very, very good kind of separation of energy. What we're finding is that it's not just about, moving energy in the non-physical realms. We can also create movements or processes or actual physical things you can do that will further assist in releasing the energy. So I hope that makes sense. I hope I didn't confuse you anymore on that. Hopefully that all makes sense. J-seals will definitely be cleared. Many people can do them. I think that just by becoming aware of structures in your body, just by learning that they exist, just by you going, I just learned about this thing in the human body, and maybe I Googled it and I looked at this chart and I learned about this pathway. Just by you learning about that pathway means that now you have a piece of information that will allow you the ability to begin unpacking how to clear it, how to treat it, how to heal it. Just by learning about the existence of many of these things, we start working with them in our own way. And so Charlene says, it was a bit funny hearing it, but it really does help. It probably does. It probably does. I noticed it in my own work. That has been one of the most useful ways to separate or kind of break energetic strands. And so, thank you. Yeah, Mandy says, so much more like unlocking of a seal than a removal. Yeah, very much like clearing. It's like you're pushing clogs through standardized areas of the human energy body that are set up. They are designed to, I shouldn't say fail, they are designed to be blocked. As we go through processes and awakenings and activations, these certain areas, not for everyone, but for the ones that will experience it, these are some of the areas in which these energies will hold up. Not the only ones. They can go all over the body. In many cases, they'll actually be outside of the body. But yeah, so thank you. Let me know if you all have any questions. We're probably going to get out of here in a little bit. That said, once again, please do tune in tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific. I'm going to be appearing with Simon Essler on this very channel. We're going to be discussing some of the stuff about camp disclosure, what I'm going to be offering there, what he's going to be offering there, and talking about all kinds of other weird stuff in the world, strange and bizarre topics. And so I hope you guys will join us for that. We might do another one on Sunday. I've been trying to get people to do a show with me. We're hoping that they'll do it. I might be asking the wrong people, I'm starting to think. So, yeah, we might see some new faces in the coming weeks. But in the meantime, please be on the lookout for the next course. We're going to be working with most likely energetic defense systems and how to really, really work with just the phenomenon of, being an empath, being a starseed. And I guess really for a lot of us, the need to begin strengthening the human energy system, because there's a tremendous amount of parasitic and just incredibly misleading disinformation that is coming out all over the place. It's showing up on every area where whether it's CNN, whether it's mainstream news, whether it's things like QAnon, whether it's the wave of disclosure celebrities that have been hijacked and turned into business ventures. Whether it be other healers in this realm that are operating in somewhat of a false light frequency and actually attaching people's consciousness to their own for the purpose of stringing them along and creating repeat customers. These are all things that many of us are experiencing. We might not experience all of them, but they're all just part of what happens when we go through this great unveiling and activation from third into fourth density. And so along with all this wild stuff and things like J-seals and the Wetiko Mayan virus and 5G and all these wild things going on in the world, we are truly, truly entering one of the stages of just amazingly intense and just truly wild human activation and just states of consciousness that for a lot of us have been taught to be impossible, unable to attain. We're experiencing just tremendous activations. And so yeah, thanks for hanging out. I'm just sort of rambling at this stage. It's been about 2 hours. And so before we get out of here, let me know if you guys have any other questions, any other comments. And yeah, we will probably be seeing you in about 24 hours online. So I think we're going to go ahead and end it there. I love you guys. Please do share this video. And please consider signing up or registering for the Camp Disclosure live stream taking place next weekend, you guys. Bunch of healers, mystics, activists, disclosure celebrities, people from all over the world are coming together for this very, very unique event. And I'm excited to see some of you guys there for a very, very unique and awesome activation. So I hope you guys will check out the live stream. And yeah, I love you guys. We'll probably see you tomorrow. So please tune in. And yeah, we will. Oh, wait, hold on. Rewind it. This little rewind sound. Thank you, Mandy. We have a very, very good question. So right as I was about to close it, everybody saw that. I was right about to get out of here. And then I saw one last question, which is a very, very good one. So we're going to close with this last question. Mandy Melinda Benoit says, are you familiar with Jason Estes? I like how he says it won't be easy for those false type of gurus and leaders. We won't be able to sustain that anymore. Thank you for that, Mandy. I was right about to bounce. And then you asked a really, really good question. I actually have a great admiration for Jason Estes. I think he has had his sort of finger or his consciousness on the pulse of many, many actually occurring events within the earth plane and the multidimensional realms. I've liked the way he has explained things, and I have noticed that on a general level, I seem to be experiencing many of the phenomenon and just the events that he's been talking about. I do believe that as we go forward through the rest of 2020, we are going to see a realignment of many people within the spiritual community, many disclosure activists, many disclosure celebrities, people that have been placed in the upper echelons of some form of disclosure celebrity and just this false light construct that has become somewhat of a product placement for this thing that, you know, people call ascension. I think we are going to see a utter and complete restructuring of a lot of those individuals. I think that people that are existing on the earth plane as teachers or mystics or psychics, and that could even be me, each and every one of us are being faced with our own elements of distortion and what I believe to be just a highly, highly activated frequency that if you are doing real work on the earth plane right now, you are going to be faced with your own darkness. And so what we're finding is a lot of people that have been placed in the upper echelons of the spiritual like community, in whatever role they are, have just been completely bypassed. They've been completely hijacked. They've allowed their message and, you know, just the information that they're disseminating to turn into products, to turn into, you know, just not deliberately misleading, but ultimately just rehashed elements of previous waves of information. And so in my experience, to get back on, you know, people like Jason Estes, I believe Jason Estes and, you know, myself and many other people to be part of a group or just elements of a multidimensional soul group that are sort of rising up right now. And they're just, you know, poised to offer what it is we are creating. And so, yeah, I hope that question, or rather that answer, makes sense. I believe there's a massive restructuring. We're also going to see a restructuring within, you know, the socio-political climate, which everyone can see coming with the recent election, and an incredible restructuring with what I call this sort of veil of parasitic influence that is being kind of weighed upon us through this sort of COVID, this COVID experiment. I'll call it an experiment. And so, anyway, I was right about to end it, and then a really good question came in. So we're going to go ahead and close it there. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. We will be back tomorrow. Thank you for all your questions and for being a part of this really interesting and strange broadcast. My name is Matthew. And yeah, we'll see you again. If you do anything today, take off the mask, throw it out. I love you guys. See you later.